Good afternoon and welcome to Euromoney's Finance is Female, a series of events in which key figures in the industry are sharing with us their expertise on crucial topics around diversity and gender balance. I am Lucy Fitzgeorge-Parker. I am the editor for Sustainable Finance at Euromoney magazine. And today, for the first of our Spotlight interview series, I'm delighted to be joined from Zurich by Olga Miler, the founder of female-focused financial education platform SmartPurse. Olga, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Euromoney.
Thanks so much for having me, Lucy. Excited to be here.
So over the next 20 minutes, Olga and I will be discussing the role of women as customers when it comes to financial services and what traditional firms and newer challengers are doing to serve them or not doing, as the case may be. Before we start, a couple of notes about today's event. Firstly, you should know that you are all on mute. However, if you have any questions for Olga, we will have time for a couple at the end of the session, so please do send them in. You can submit questions via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and you can also upvote questions you'd like by clicking on the thumbs up sign next to them. Our producer today is Sarah Leach. She will be helping us with any technical difficulties we may have, and she can also help you if you have any tech problems. Again, you can contact her via the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you miss any of the interview, don't worry, it's being recorded. We'll share a link to the recording afterwards, and you can also find it on the Finance is Female virtual events page at Euromoney.com. Also, if you're a Twitter user and would like to tweet about the event, the hashtag is FinanceIsFemale. And finally, a short disclaimer. This event is for information purposes only. We're not giving investment or transaction advice. All views expressed on this session are those of the participants, not of Euromoney. All comments are public and on the record. And all content is copyright Euromoney Institutional Investor 2020. That said, we can now get on with today's discussion and the question of women as customers in financial services firms. Now, Olga, you've done a lot of work on this area, both in your role as founder of SmartPurse and in your previous career in banking. I guess my first question for you would be, why are we even having this discussion? On the face of it, financial products, a loan, a bank account, a mutual fund, seem to be pretty non-gendered. What is it about the female customers? Why do we need to talk specifically about female customers when it comes to financial services?
So I think, first and foremost, there is no difference in the product. Really, nobody needs pink products, okay? And it's also not about designing pink products. We are having this discussion because an urgent improvement of customer experience is needed. And it starts with the women because we are basically such a large target audience. That doesn't mean that if there is a financial services provider improving their customer experience for women, everybody else wouldn't benefit from it. Everybody else will benefit, but we are such a large audience holding 40% of global private wealth. And this is something that just can't be ignored. So talking about women in finance for me is far less about the product, but is about how do we craft an advisory experience, a digital customer experience, and the way how we present our services so that everybody would feel welcome and included, and everybody would see their lives reflected in the advice we are giving. And for me, the conversation is very much needed because I think as an industry, we made great strides, but we are definitely not there yet.
Okay, so what is it then that if the products aren't different, if we don't need different products, then how do women differ as customers from men when it comes to financial services? I think there's traditionally a perception that women are perhaps more conservative. Is that true?
I would say women are not necessarily more conservative, they are more thorough. But the main differences are, first and foremost, women would love to connect to their advisors on a personal level. So be respected as human beings, not just as holders of a giant purse. Secondly, there is all of this topic around the transparency of the information and how the information is presented. And if it is hidden behind a lot of acronyms and behind a lot of complex language, then this just puts people off. In my own research, roughly 1/3 of women has said, look, I don't even know where to get started, right? Because it is so overwhelming. And transparency goes through all of the value chain of financial services, how we describe the product. How do you know what is inside a product? Is it sustainable? Is it not sustainable? Like there is no thing like food labels, right? Or nutritional for financial services products. How do we describe our pricing? How do I even know how much this is costing me and what benefit it brings? So it is really these things that women demand, and therefore if they kind of don't see them because they usually are very time poor, they manage very complex lives, being a mother, being a worker, being a person that has multiple interests. I can't say it puts us off, but it makes us probably less engaged. So the differences are not that much around, you know, I'm a woman and I need something very different, but I demand a different experience. And then, yes, there is, of course, this old, and I really deliberately calling it old notion of financial services, where it was said, you know, it's all white male, but I think we have already passed that, so I won't dwell on that, right?
Well, you say that there's an idea that financial services all white male is in the past, but I have to say personally, I don't think I ever see an advertisement for investment products that depicts an investor as anything other than a middle-aged white man.
Well, I think there are progressive people who are trying to improve that. The new fintechs are pushing in that direction. I think there is more and more attention on the topic, but obviously change can't happen from one day to the other, because usually you also market for a product by putting forward the people that lead the firms or that sit in decision-making roles, such as the chief investment officers, who very often are the spokespeople for, at least in wealth management, a financial services firm. So if that is still the approach to marketing, I personally think it will take just a little while to change. That said, I am also aware of a lot of really good intent, both from bigger firms, as well as I said, the disruptors that push in there, as well as obviously from the women themselves, creating their own solutions, creating their own service lines, creating their own advisory practice, because they feel that change is not happening fast enough, or because they see a stellar business opportunity and say, you know what, here is really something where we could add value with our product and service. So I think this kind of image still takes a little while to change, but there is a lot of energy, which makes me personally very positive and hopeful.
Well, again, I mean, going back to there is a lot of energy for change. But as a woman, customer, I don't see much marketing that's targeted at me. And by that, I don't just mean depictions in advertising, although, as I say, I don't usually see investors who look like me depicted in advertising. But I also don't get targeted adverts on social media from financial services firms, at least unless the social media seems to decide that I'm a man, in which case I do. But as long as it's identified me as female, I don't tend to get targeted with investment products. So it does seem like, you know, a lot of firms, maybe it's the traditional firms, really aren't reaching out to women in the way that they could be.
Well, I think so far, and here I'm coming back to kind of my time in the world's largest wealth manager, the industry's response to kind of the emerging needs of women has been a very typical response: research. Position yourself with a lot of research. And by now I feel in 2020 that women and money are probably one of the most researched subjects on the globe. There is so much research that explains to us how we deal with money, what we do with money, what we don't do with money. And that's fabulous to have all of this data, because data is needed to actually measure progress and facilitate change. But I would love to see more tangible solutions, more action. And so probably one of the reasons why you don't feel spoken to in terms of the advertising and marketing that is being put out there, because all of this research doesn't translate in how the financial services firms speak to you. I have never seen an advertisement of a firm that says, you know, you've just become a mother or you've lost a job, here is how we can help you. And just do it with a very normal, common sense I would say voice. And that's probably where we kind of see the disconnect. The industry produces a lot of data and there is a lot of good intent, but it still talks with the same language that it used to talk for centuries. And that doesn't necessarily connect with women. But that said, it doesn't connect with the younger people either. There is a wonderful research study here in Switzerland where they did an investigation how younger people, independent of gender, engage with financial services. And roughly 43% responded that they keep all of their money on a saving account because they are not aware of what the financial products options would be available to them. So I think this runs very deep. And hence, coming back on my first statement, if you improve the customer experience for women, you improve the customer experience for everyone, which definitely can be a stellar business practice.
So why do you think, I mean, you were saying to start with that, you know, women want to do more due diligence, perhaps they're more thorough, they're put off by lots of acronyms, by lots of jargon. Why is it that women are put off and men aren't put off? Are men more cavalier when it comes to investment, or is it just that are perhaps better educated? They have more understanding of it.
So deep inside the research, you find that yes, men have just a tiny bit more of financial literacy, but actually the differences are absolutely minor. I think it's a matter of that women in a certain extent don't feel entitled, that money would be our thing. I think in the UK it's until 1971, in Switzerland 1976, where women still had to ask for permission in order to open a bank account or in order to do a job and be paid for without their husband's permission. And so we do carry these deep money messages with us, that money is something that we almost are kind of not entitled to. And once we have comprehended that we are entitled to it and that we should be or should have a seat at the table, it is all of this bulk of being extremely cumbersome processes and the language that basically puts women off. What the men do is they just get on with it. So I wouldn't say that women are less knowledgeable in general terms about finance. The less knowledgeable is a consequence of long years of being excluded, right? If you don't get in touch with something, or if it never had been made available to you, or if your parents have not spoken to you about money, but they always educated, for instance, your brother, you obviously naturally know less about the subject matter. And then because we are so thorough, or in most cases we are so thorough, I know many women that say, you know what, I really need to read this and that chapter on SmartPurse so I can have a discussion with a financial advisor, which I find very interesting, right? Because wouldn't it be the advisor actually helping the woman and explain everything in proper terms? Why do we feel that we first need to get a college degree in finance in order to be able to see a financial professional? So these are kind of these stereotypes. Now, on the very positive side, of course, once women engage, they make for stellar investors with really good return, really conscious about risk, very well balanced, investing for the long term, and with a very strong notion towards sustainability. So we as a society would have every interest to engage women and make financial services more accessible, more comprehensive, and I would say also probably a little bit more fun.
That sounds great. I think there are a lot of things that could be more appealing about financial services, definitely. But I'm interested to know that you mentioned that women feel they need to educate themselves very thoroughly before they go and see a financial advisor. And yes, I feel very seen, as they say, in that respect. Certainly, I would admit to that. But is there not a question perhaps also that there's less trust for women, that women feel that they expect when they go see a financial advisor that they probably won't be seeing another woman, and that perhaps that puts up again more barriers, and that women are less inclined to trust financial professionals than men maybe?
So there is no point of research that would point to the fact that women prefer a female financial advisor over a male one. But what we are put off with is if you receive a straightforward product page the moment you see the person. I think there is this inherent desire to make a personal connection. And it was very, very early on in one of our sounding meetings that we did, where one lady put it that way, say, finding a good financial advisor is as important as finding a nanny. And I actually love that statement because it makes it very clear. There needs to be a personal connection. There needs to be a level of trust that the advice you receive is both in your best interest and obviously is very transparent. And that's why women will, you know, not take the first best offer. They will go, they will sound with their friends, they will ask for a second opinion. And that makes the decision-making process incredibly slow. When you sit inside a financial services firm and obviously you have certain targets and you have certain objectives, the decision-making process with the woman will be longer winded than it might be with a man. And that is also where, you know, kind of, it's almost like a clash because the financial advisors have certain targets, or some of them actually have, and yet they need to take the time to understand the person, to make this connection, to answer all of these questions. But when they do, women become incredibly loyal customers and also incredibly referring customers because we exchange, right? We talk to each other, we support each other. And so many women actually find their financial advisor through word of mouth because they made a good experience.
So in talking about the sort of the financial products that women do want, I mean, you mentioned the newer challenges, the new companies that are setting up to serve women specifically. Obviously, you founded one of those in SmartPurse. So what are where and what are these new market entrants that are, because I have to admit, I have not been aware of them so far myself. So how do you find these new firms and what is out there? How is the ecosystem developing?
So I think the new entrants, besides neobanks and then kind of very dedicated services and budgeting apps and education platforms like SmartPurses, all have one thing in common, which is starting their customer experience design from the scratch and not being bound by large-scale legacy tech that they first need to change. And that is what makes them, I would say, compared to traditional big financial services firms, almost a little bit dangerous because they have this agility and they have sounding processes in place. And if you work inside a large financial services firm, until you have even adopted throughout all of your systems a certain piece, the piece of tech might already be old. So I personally believe that the disruption for financial services is very much coming from the sideline. We were always playing this mantra, you know, is Google taking it over? Is Apple taking it over? Because they have this experience down to an art, whereas we are still so focused as an industry on the products that we push out. And I think here, the winners will be who manage to get the experience right, because there are enough products out there that one could choose from, almost too many, right? So the new players really are the ones that get the language right, that get the images right, that get their tech functioning seamlessly, that are fast in responding to customer inquiries, that provide a certain level of confidence also to people who might not have $1 million to invest, but basically have smaller amounts to invest. That said, I personally am a big believer in kind of the hybrid model. I don't think that tech will take it over completely. I believe that especially in dynamic times like these, you also do appreciate having a person to talk to and to give you advice when things go sour. So having the right balance and being able to segment your customers like the car industry does or consumer packaged goods does, I think this is where the future for financial services lies. And those who get it right will be on an absolutely winning scheme.
So it is still about, a lot of it is still about data. It's just about making good use of the data.
Oh, absolutely. It's about gaining the data and being able to make good use of it. And obviously, we are a highly regulated industry, right? So that makes things incredibly difficult. By default, many firms didn't have a stellar CRM system in place, for instance, or didn't invest in one early enough. And so until this change happens, it will take a lot of effort. having good customer data is one thing, being able to act on it consistently and go through these iterations of improvements, getting the feedback and then do something with it, I think is where kind of the biggest difficulty lies. And obviously, if you first need to kind of assess whether you rip out all of your systems and put Salesforce in place or Oracle in place or whatever have you, you know, it becomes a multi-year project. And that's why I think it is kind of not a dangerous place, but I think it just opens a window to those that are nimble and fast, or to those that are extremely courageous.
Okay, so we've had a couple of questions come in. I think we're nearly out of time, so I'll just take one of these. We've had a question saying, again, going back to what I was saying about the marketing in financial services. Izzy has asked, what do you think are the main blockers to achieving inclusive marketing in financial services? I mean, if it is the case that financial services firms still too often are depicting investors as male, what's stopping them from doing it? Is that just inertia, or is there anything? What needs to be cleared away in order to make that happen? Make women more represented in marketing?
It's a great question. I think it's three things. It starts being aware of your own biases. So here, speaking in my role as a former CMO, even I myself detected that, you know, sometimes you have all the best intent and you put the picture of a woman next to a text and you look at it again, it's like, Jesus Christ, this is condescending. We probably can't do that. So consistently checking against your own biases is one thing. The second thing is to include the target audiences that you intend to get attention with into a coherent process of sounding. I mean, ask yourself, when is the last time you actually checked an ad with a diverse group of women, women of color, and for instance, also women with disabilities? And what did they tell you about that ad? And having this consistent co-creation loop inside your marketing processes and your design processes, for me, is kind of the second thing. And then the third thing is the choice of providers. A lot of the marketing is being created by creative agencies. Obviously, if you do not choose them well, or you do not make it very clear to them that you want to consciously be inclusive and that they should create stuff for you that is inclusive from the get-go, then the proposals you receive already are kind of half-baked, and then they go through the funnel and out it goes.
Okay, great. Well, unfortunately, I see that we have already been 20 minutes. It doesn't seem like 20 minutes, but that's what the clock is telling me, which means that we have to wrap up, which is a great shame, as I would really love to carry on this conversation. But for today, I'm afraid that's it. Thank you very much indeed, Olga, for a fascinating discussion. It's been really great to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
A big thank you also to our producer, Sarah, and of course to all of you for joining us today. We'll be returning with another Spotlight interview on the 4th of August at 2 p.m. UK time. Details are now on your screen. That's with Fiona Haythorne, the CEO of Women on Boards UK, who will take a look in discussion with Sol Contreras at the topic of getting to the C-suite. Details of how to register can be found on the Finances Female virtual events page, where you can also find the on-demand link to this recording. So I hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, and goodbye from Euromoney.